Hi, we want to talk about a Excel spreadsheet that you can download for free that helps you do an executive overview of all the things that need to be done on your airplane. Let's talk about the maintenance on your airplane. Do you delegate this to your trusted mechanic or do you just abdicate? The difference is whether you follow up or whether you just blindly look the other way when they say, yes, it's all good. The FAR say that you are ultimately responsible for ensuring that your airplane is airworthy and all these and other maintenance has been performed. As a practical matter, it's your life and your family's that hangs in the balance regardless of any regulations. No, you cannot hover over your mechanic every minute, and you do have to trust that they're doing a good job. Many people do trust their mechanic, either because of good reason or because they have no other choice. Now, to make quote an old Russian proverb made famous by a president, trust, but verify. Not all mechanics are Bonanza specific, and even those that are still human. They make mistakes, they make oversights. All that's being suggested is you keep your own little dossier of what's supposed to be done on your plane and then follow up that it was done. I'm not going to belabor a point, but this is your plane, your responsibility. And we're going to give you an easy to use, ready made for you Excel workbook. And so we'll quote one more president, Harry Truman, the buck stops here. Not with the mechanic, not with your insurance company, not with ATC, you. How do we do it? We have a pre-made Excel worksheet, to track the to-dos on your airplane, which we'll get into in a minute. But this is going to pretty much do all the work for you. It's almost a paint by numbers, fill in the blanks dossier for you. When you open it up, and we'll show you how at the end, there's a README tab that gives you the overview of what's going on in this workbook and 3 sheets. This is an example of the README first tab. The tabs that would normally be along the bottom are shown at the top of this slide. You have an overview, which is going to be, we'll show you in a second, the basic hours, maintenance, serial number, that type of thing. And then there's going to be the maintenance, which you'll probably spend most of your concern with. And then there's an equipment or component list. That's a convenient place to list the manufacturer, model, serial number, and age of your starter motor, your gear motor, your wires, your magnetos, your voltage regulators. God forbid you get stranded someplace and the mechanic there says, well, it could be your voltage regulator. How old is the regulator? How many hours you got on it? And you say, oh, I don't know. Well, maybe it's the wires. How many hours you got on the wires? Oh, I don't know. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to just input your component or equipment list once, update it every so often when you actually do replace wires, voltage regulators, magnetos, starters, etc., and just have it with you. Okay, here's the overview tab, or sheet as it's called. Tail number, make, model, serial number, year. And if you want to, you can copy and paste a little picture of it. So if you print this out and give it to your mechanic, they make sure that they're looking at your airplane. And besides, you probably have a gorgeous airplane. Why not keep a picture of it? Notice in column C, it's got the engine as of date, hours, recent hours, and current hours. Notice that at the bottom, rows 20 through 23, it says, well, things are color-coded. Let's talk about what they are. Things that are in gray are pretty much you put in one time or very infrequently updated. Things that are in yellow, you update regularly. Every time you update the engine tach hours, for example, or every time you do an oil change, you would put the date and the hours on the cell sheet, and that would be yellow to highlight that this is something that you expect to be doing very frequently. And the orange are the, as we say in the Italian world, keep you hands off. These are calculations that it's going to do for you. Don't mess with it, leave it alone. So in column C, if you see the slide, you put an as of date, which is the 1st of March 2019. And in the spreadsheet, you still enter it the way you normally would, which would be like 3/1/19. This is just the date format that I've chosen to be a little bit more succinct. Engine hours, you put in the number of engine hours, which would be your engine tach hours. Recent hours are something that we'll talk to a little bit separately, which is to say, I haven't checked my engine tach time in a while, but I know that I've put, in this case, 15 hours on the plane. Maybe that's pushing me close to my engine oil change, so it keeps track of a virtual total time on the plane. The column next to it, E as in echo, says, okay, let's talk about the airframe hours. Well, this is probably, or quite possibly not, your first engine tach. For some it will be, for some it's not. And so the 65 hours in this example that are on the current engine tach are not the total time on the plane. There were, let's say in this example, 2,000 hours that were on the plane before this tach got reset to 0, which plus the 15 hours that we've been flying recently gives us a total time on the airframe, TTAF, of 2080. Here's the important note, and some people get this, and some people, we go round and round on it. The engine tach time is not a consistent, reliable meter of activity on your airplane, as it can and often is reset, sometimes more than once. What we need is more like a car's odometer, which is never reset. At least theoretically, they're never reset. For that, we use the TTAF, total time on the airframe. But since your only hour meter visible in the cockpit is the current tach time, planes don't have odometers, the very first sheet is where you put in the base hours that are added to the current tach time to get a TTAF, which is to say how many hours were on the plane before the current engine tach was starting at 0. Okay? Maybe beating a dead horse, may not be the way you do things. Trust me when I tell you, we need the TTAF to basically be a consistent baseline for everything we're going to do, or having multiple timelines is going to screw things up worse than a bad episode of Star Trek where they go to different timelines. Apologies if you're not a Trekkie. Okay, in this example, let's say you had 2,000 hours on the plane before the engine tach currently in use was reset to 0. You put the 2,000 hours shown above. If, however, you are on your first engine tach and TTAF is the same as what shows up on your engine tach, then instead of the 2,000 as an example, you'd put a 0. Again, you might be beating a dead horse. Ignore this if it doesn't apply to you. If and when you do replace your engine or do a major overhaul, you do not reset your engine tach to 0 as some people think or do. Your engine is not the only component that needs an hourly based maintenance and a reliable timeline. Here's the maintenance tab. You'll see it as the third one from the bottom. Read me first and then the overview of the first two, as you see at the bottom of the slide. It basically has 3 columns. Before we do that, notice that in the upper left-hand column corner in blue, it is basically doing an Excel link to the previous overview tab so that every sheet knows your tail number, your previous tach, your current engine hours, and your current TTAF. You do not have to enter them ever again except on the overview tab. Okay, the first columns in red is the one-time schedule. Basically, if you do your MOH every 2,000 hours, or top overhaul every 1,700, your left magnetos every 500 hours, your alternator inspection every 205, whatever it is, you put that in there. Or maybe you replace your battery every 36 months, or an ELT inspection every 12 months. You put that in either under the hours column or the months column. And that's it. Pretty much don't have to change again. That's why it's shadowed in gray. Yes, separately, we can show you how you can hide these columns so you don't have to look at them all the time, but those are the places where you put in the schedule. The next columns, K through N, if you can read that, the ones that are in green, are the things that you will be inputting frequently. That's why they're all in yellow, except for the TTAF, which, as I say, is calculated for you. It says, okay, when's the last time you did a major overhaul? When's the last time you did an oil change? How many hours were on the current tach, and what was the date done? So even if it's something that's due purely based on hours, put the date on there, because if you ever want to check it in the actual logbook, the date tells you where to look in the logbook instead of having to flip through hundreds of pages. Notice that the TTAF column, M as in Mike, is in orange because, as we did on the previous tab, the TTF is going to be calculated for you. It might be the same as your previous tach, or it might be in addition to how many hours were on the plane when you started your tach. That's what column L, as in Lima, is. Notice that for the left magneto inspection, Here we said 1600, but that was on the previous tack before the current tack was set to 0. And it knows that, okay, then 1600 hours is the TTAF for that maintenance item, etc. And the date you did it. Finally, columns P through U are the done for you, isn't that nice of it, calculations for when they're next due. Again, column P as in Papa is the underlying TTAF hours, and that's calculated for you. And it says, okay, using your current engine tack, how many hours will that be? And then if it's a date-based calculation, for example, the last three along the bottom, battery, ELT inspection, and ELT battery, it'll do the date arithmetic for you. And as a favor, it says, well, let's tell you how much time you've got left before that occurs. Things have a way of creeping up on you. And so it subtracts the hours due from the current TTAF hours, and it tells you how many hours before these things are due. Similarly, it does it for months. And as a clever, gee, isn't that nice, it even color codes columns T as in Tango and U as in Uniform that says, well, maybe we'll kind of put up a little bit of a warning track that at 20 hours, for example, it goes to yellow. When you're down to 15 hours before this is due, it goes to orange. And then from 10 down to 0, it says, we better put that in red because you need to do that really soon. More details, but to a large extent, this should be self-explanatory. Finally, there are a lot of little built-in help pop-ups. Any cell that has that little red triangle in the upper right-hand corner means that if you hover your cursor over it, and so you got to do this on a PC or a laptop, you can't do it on a tablet because there's no hover over concept on a tablet, but it'll pop up a little help screen that explains a little something about why this column or cell applies. And this is built into there. So, all done? How do you get started? Basically, you just have to download it. It may look a little complicated, but you should be able to do this in just a few minutes. Step number 1, you go to my website, n78hf.com. Step number 2, you go to the little blue box in the upper right-hand corner that says Documents. That'll bring you up to the next page, shown in red 3. And pretty near the top is something that says Do-It-Yourself Owner Maintenance Checklist Excel. Click on it, and it will download and, depending on your configurations, open Excel for you. Depending on your computer's configurations, download and the opening may be separate, but can't tell you how your computer is set up for it. You open up Excel with that file, which in my case all happens automatically, and you get to step number 4. Basically, it says, at least Windows says, I have no idea whether you knew that you just downloaded something or not, and we're going to wake up in a disabled mode, and you have to tell me that you know what you're doing and enable editing to make sure that this isn't some random virus that got opened behind your back. Say yes, this is without an accident. Almost last but not least, number 5, go to File and do a Save As, because the file is going to be downloaded some cryptic, goofic 32-digit file name, which is meaningless. And so step number 6 and 7, you save it as, and just a suggested naming convention, maintenance log, M-A-I-N-T log, underscore, your tail number, underscore, the year and month, that this is. It'll make a nice chronology if you ever give this to your mechanic and he's got other people doing this, and make sure that your file doesn't have the same name as someone else's, and if you update it either for safety copies or for whatever reason, it's even date stamped as part of the file name. Okay? We're done. If you have any questions, email me. Love to hear from you. It's henry@n78hf.com. Thank you.